Opening the Board of Selectmen's meeting is January 2nd, 2018. If we could all stand and pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, on our agenda this evening, we have a public hearing for a common vic license. We have the manager's report, which will be read, and I'll turn that over to Derek. The town has received an application for a 40B housing project on 149 Main Street. We'll talk about that. The Board of Selectmen will have a discussion relative to the tax title properties listings, and I believe we should have hard copy tonight of those. Just got them, thank you. We'll also consider the annual report and the revisions proposed for that. The board will also discuss a residence request giving relative to the Upton Center, that we reconsider a reactivation of the Upton Development Committee, or whatever we want to classify it, Industrial Commission. There's an item on the agenda Mr. Metellian asked to have put on relative to the appointment process. We have a discussion which town manager will brief us on relative to Narragansett Indian Tribal Historic Preservation Trust. And we'll also be reviewing an application from Mendon Upton Educational Foundation to hold a road days. In addition to that, for conclusion of the meeting, the board will enter executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception 2, to discuss contract negotiations with non-union personnel. The board will not reconvene at the conclusion of that executive session. We will adjourn our meeting. There will be no open format after that. So, before we begin, gentlemen, do you have minutes? We have minutes to approve?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we approve the December 5th meetings with the changes you submitted, December 13th, and the executive session from December 5th.
Second the motion.
That's unanimous action of the board. Okay, we have a couple of minutes just before the 6:05 public hearing. Let's see. We'll defer that one as well. The annual report, have either one of you had any conversation with the Treasurer Collector's Office relative to the
Not in
salary?
person, just via email.
Okay.
Yeah, just via email.
Well, we have a drop dead date of January 14th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? 10th? Oh, I better hurry up with the town report. I thought I had till the 14th. All right, I'll be diligent with that. Well, all I can say is if you have proposed changes, we're gonna have to act on them rather quickly, because they've got a printer's deadline they have to meet in order to get the books published in time. So, gentlemen, do I defer to you?
Talking to Mr. via email, it seems like anything that we wanted is possible, the way I read it.
Yes, I mean, I don't think that he's particularly fond of the notion. However, I've spoken through our town manager, and we can certainly pull the information together. So,
Okay.
You think it's
so as
feasible?
long as,
I believe that we can provide something similar to what the town of Mendon provides. For us to pull that information, it's gonna be important to know exactly what you want, so that we can either work through the treasure collector, and if we can't do that, then maybe we can work directly with the vendor that does our payroll.
okay.
All right, we're satisfied? So we'll leave that in your hands at this point?
Okay.
Working with, okay.
I guess I'm unsure of the exact format. Do you want us to follow the same format as Mendon? Because, there's certain, we think about an individual salary, some of us have straightforward salaries. Some individuals, like police officers, for example, they have stipends, they have overtime, they have details. So I'm just trying to understand in greater detail as to exactly what you're looking for as far as salaries and wages for these individuals.
I mean, I would propose, I think we bounced around some ideas. I would propose 4 columns, kind of the, base salary, overtime, detail, and a total.
Okay.
And of course, we don't, on the heading, could also, use the word stipends / overtime. So maybe if there are, say, fire personnel that may receive stipends, it would show up in a separate column. So, I think we just need to play with the words a little bit there so that we make sure that we cover more than one income source.
Okay.
I think if that makes any sense.
Sometimes stipends are considered base pay, depends how they're paid, whether it's weekly or semi-annual, annually, so.
Well, time is, and we have a hearing, and right now, as a matter of fact. So let's defer this, we'll come back and visit it. I'm opening a hearing, it is 6:05, and I'll read the legal notice. In conformity with Chapter 140 of General Laws, notice is hereby given that the public hearing will be held on January 2nd, 2018, at 6:05 Town Hall, 1 Main Street, 2nd floor. The public hearing is being held upon the request of Global Montello Group, 800 South Street, Waltham, Mass., owner Honey Farms, number 3811, for the purpose of obtaining a common victual license at 113 Main Street. Is there someone from the company here? You are? Oh, please step forward. Introduce yourself.
Oh, I am, oops, sorry about that.
Pull up a chair, please.
Okay. My name is Cynthia Gingras. I've worked for Honey Farms for almost 6 years. Global Partners just bought out the company from the Iandoli family on October 17th of 17. And the store will continue to run as Honey Farms. Honey Farms is a great brand name in the entire Worcester market. So we would appreciate the ability to have the common vic.
Okay, open it up to debate. This is pretty clear, but Gary, any questions?
No questions, I read your application, and like I said, it's name staying the same and everything, so I have nothing.
I have no questions.
Okay, and the only thing I have to make is for disclosure, I used to work for the Iandoli family, and I did know Wilfred Iandoli, but that's been a number of years, significant while. So, therefore, if there are any questions from the general public, therefore none, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to transfer the common vic license for Honey Store number 3811 to the Global Montello Group.
Yes.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank
Are you going to be at the store yourself?
I'm in there quite often.
Okay.
I'm a district manager, and
Oh,
that's one of my
okay.
stores, and I live in Douglas.
Okay, you're close by. Well,
So will that common vic be mailed out to Global, or?
Sandy will take care of it
I'll
with
take
you.
care of it, I'll probably just drop it off at the store.
Okay,
It's easier.
all right, and I'll let the manager know.
Okay.
Okay,
Great.
well, thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, back to our agenda. Let's go back to the talk on the town report, because there is some discussion here. My preference would be, because of the timeline and the uniqueness of changing the whole format, that we try and keep it the crux of what we want, showing the salaries, but try to keep it as basic as possible so that they have the ability, if it's going to require people to go in and start crunching numbers and really spend significant time, I think this is very short notice
We could
to
always
ask somebody to do that.
We could always expand upon it too when we get a better feel of what we really want
Mhm.
in there.
And do you think it's easy enough to do it as a 3 columns with a total? Does that sound like a pretty straightforward approach in your experience?
Again, it's gonna really come down to the vendor and what abilities they have to filter the payroll system. But if you don't mind, let me work with the treasure collector, see what we can come up with, and then maybe, Mr. Chairman, if you want to designate Selectman Matalian, I can work directly with, and we can kind of hash out something, as Selectman Doherty mentioned, as a first pass at it, and then maybe next year we could always expand upon it.
Agreed?
Yes, that sounds good.
Okay,
And
thank you
certainly
for
if
this.
it's only 2 columns in a total, that may be easier.
Okay, at least the process starts.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We now at the manager's report.
All right, so, some great news to report. Back in November, Chief Bradley was elected to the position of Sergeant at Arms for the Mass Chiefs of Police Association. And then in December, himself and 3 other officers were then appointed to those positions. Given the fact that the chief is now Sergeant at Arms of the Chiefs Association, this makes him in line to be president by 2022. So this is a great accomplishment for the town of Upton, in my opinion. I think the chief's been a leader. amongst other departments through his accreditation efforts, and so that's being recognized certainly by this appointment. Moving on, the chief, the police department and the recreation commission have teamed up once again this year, and they're gonna have recreation nights for the local youths at BVT. Those will be the 4 Saturdays in January 6th, 13th, 20th, and 27th, where they're gonna have open gyms for all of our youth here in town. And there's no fee, just so the folks know out there, there's no fee to register. And I think we'll put that information, may already be on the website, I'm not sure,
We
but
tweeted it and
you've
it's
already
on the
sent it out.
website.
So try to push that far and wide. Moving on, I've recently met with the men's club, and they have mentioned that in the past, they've come before the board to talk about an initiative where they hope to attach banners on the poles along Main Street, all the way up from West Upton down to the park over here. So I'm working very closely with them. We're just in the process right now that we're trying to get National Grid and Verizon to sign off on allowing us to affix these types of banners. We're hoping to get this accomplished by the 4th of July. The first banners I'd love to put up there would be banners of our national flag. So again, they do plan on coming before the board to request anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 out of the trust funds to be used to purchase the flags and purchase the mounting brackets. I'm happy to report that I was notified on Friday that the town has won a grant to develop an economic development plan. That plan is going to allow us to consider all the necessary zoning changes, look at our priority development areas. There may be needs to rezone certain areas and look at the old village district model that was presented in years past. I'm not exactly certain how much that grant is for just yet, but that grant's gonna pay for those items I just described, which I also think would be great to lead into this economic development committee that is before us this evening. I did mention in my report the passing of retired Fire Lieutenant Keith Orell. For those out there, he was a call firefighter for approximately 30 years with the Upton Fire Department, and his wake is this evening, and then his funeral will be tomorrow morning. And our department is supporting the request of the family by leading the procession, so on and so forth. And then lastly, there's been a lot of conversations because of the many storms that we've had. And I don't think people realize it, but we've already had 5 snow and/or ice storms so far this year. Tomorrow, we're heading into our 6th storm. Excuse me, we've had 6 so far with this past week's storm over the weekend. Tomorrow will be our 7th storm. That being said, not including the 6th storm, which was this past weekend, we've already spent approximately $74,000 in our snow and ice budget. The Christmas storms on the 24th and the 25th totaled approximately $15,000 alone just for those 2 days of operations, in large part because of our collective bargaining agreement, and what we have to pay folks to work on a holiday. So that being said, the DPW director has provided a report, which I'm attaching to my report for folks, if they're interested, to learn more about the details of the 5 different storms that our DPW has already responded to. That's it.
Mhm. That's it.
That's it.
I have a couple of questions. Just some updates. You sent us a status report on a number of issues, which I thank you for. You probably took you a couple of hours the list was pretty long. But the situation down on West River Street with the agreement with the developer for the water rights, there's an issue with that at this point? Because I was part of that. In order to get pumping station established within that property and to cross that land, we made that agreement. Is there now a problem where it contradicts something we agreed to?
Well, there was some confusion. So there was an MOU that was signed by the previous town manager that asked the property owner to give the town an easement to that land back there, to the pumping station. In turn, the town would then provide 3 water hookups to a future development. What we did not know at the time, and I checked with the water department, that the town had connected 5 other connections in a different development, but that was based upon a different project. So we thought we had already
I
provided
understand.
those services because of the 5
Mhm.
other connections. But then we sat down with the property owners, himself and his attorney and our attorney. We went through the MOU, we pulled out the maps, we looked at what services he's provided, what services we've provided, and we all agree the town still has to provide those
Correct.
3 hookups.
Okay.
So we're in the process of just having an agreement drawn up
Mhm.
between the
Okay.
2 attorneys, so that there's no confusion moving forward.
Okay. The other one was you wrote the 4-log system at the wells. How expensive is that gonna be? Do we have a price on that?
We don't have a price just yet. CDM is drawing up the design right now. What they need to do is, they need to run a separate line back from the pump station all the way back to the wells, where they're gonna put a chlorine injector back to the wells. And so when you think about, here's your well, here's your pump station, there's about 100 yards of water main in
Mhm.
between there. And so it's from the pump, from the well to the pump station, we want to have contact time of chlorine. Right now, the contact time happens at the pump station. And so the state said if we have the contact time going back to the well, then that'll provide enough assurances that the water has been chlorinated to their satisfaction.
So basically, when there's still water there, it's treated, and the first flush through isn't, yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
got it. Okay. That answered the questions I have. Anyone else?
Nothing.
No? Okay. All right, thank you. Next, we have in the discussion, there's a 40B proposal on 149 Main Street, Snowflake Development. And basically, this, to be very clear, because people misinterpret this, when you hear 40B, it's classified affordable, but that term simply means affordable to the market conditions of the town it's in. In the town of Upton, I'm going to take a stab at it, but I'm going to think affordable is probably in the $250,000 to $300,000 range. So we need to get context that these are going to be apartments that are going to be in a much more reasonable price range. The developer, we've met, and I'm not taking the thunder away from you, Derek. We met with the Housing Authority, State Housing. They came up, they've looked at it. They are very satisfied with what they see, and it looks like all the checks and balances are there. The thing that's going to be, I think, important for Upton is we have a housing shortage, especially for the young people or the people that are coming to this town that are employed and they want to live in town, and the cost of housing is so high that this is going to give them an opportunity. And we have asked the developer for the right, even though it's a lottery system, to allow within the lottery that employees of Upton have first choice. And we're hoping that will go through as well. Have I missed anything on that?
Other than that, we've had the opportunity to request input from all of our boards and committees, Conservation, Planning, ZBA, and we've collected all those comments and we've sent that to Mass Housing. So Mass Housing has heard very loudly and clearly some of the concerns that the boards and committees have in town with this project.
Okay. Gentlemen, any questions?
Nothing, no?
No?
Do we have an idea of how many houses will be affordable yet?
25% of them will be
Okay.
actual affordable. All 44 will be considered as part of our affordable units here in town.
Right. So it assists with us meeting our 10% goal?
Right.
I think it was 11 units of the 44 was in the plan, I believe.
The dilemma we have is that, you know, we're losing percentages meeting the state requirement for the affordable housing, so. Okay, I'd ask the assessors if they'd like to come up, because I know you did a lot of work on this. He did a lot of work, well, you're welcome to. Mr. Taylor and Ms. McElrath, basically what we have before us, the board has had some concern relative to properties that are pending, let's say, any action by the town as to tax title listings, either abandoned properties or whatever. So, excuse me. So, oh, I took his, I'm sorry. So at this point, I'll turn it over to you, Bill. I know you did all this work, and if you could just give us a brief overview of what we're seeing here, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so we started by running a report of all properties that showed as owned by the town of Upton. And essentially, we looked at, tried to look at all the deeds to confirm which are tax title takings and which are otherwise acquired by the town. So we created a list of the tax taking parcels, and eyeballing it, it looks like there's probably about 20. Some of which date back a fair time, some of which are very recent. Probably about 15, of which there's really no issue at all. They're straightforward tax takings. There's 3 are closely associated with the Warrenbrook Watershed Conservation Area. They apply, in fact, are currently included in the forestry plan that was put together for the North Upton open spaces. There's 3 of them which I think they were tax takings, but they need to be resolved otherwise. One of which happens to be Radish Road. I think that's just an issue where the road didn't go through the normal acceptance process, or perhaps there's just a deed that needs to be filed with the registry. There's a parcel off of Rockdale Hill Circle. I'm sorry, it's a parcel off of Quail Run, which is off of Grove Street, which is a taking, but I looked at the plan and it shows as open space parcel. So we just need to resolve whether or not that should be treated as open space per the subdivision approval, or it is actually something that could be taken and sold. And then essentially that's it. They're on the list. It includes the ones that were sold and the one that was transferred to the control of the Board of Selectmen at the last town meeting, just because those deeds haven't made it to our database yet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so the result of all of this work is, the net is, most of the properties are accounted for.
Yep.
And is not we don't want people to be led, because there was conversation at the last special town meeting that there were multiple properties out there that the town had or didn't have and should have. So you verify the accuracy of this. I'm just a little confused when it says, and I'm looking at one like where was it? It was 0 Milford Lane. I don't even know where Milford Lane is. I thought I knew every street in Upton. And it's at 182-6, and it says deed not located for a cemetery. Is
Oh,
that?
no, you're looking, I created 2 lists. One was all tax
So this is the
takings,
single page.
and that one is all the other properties.
Do you have the single page? Okay.
Now I see
Okay.
it.
So the
I
single,
get it.
yeah,
Thank you.
we
Okay.
blew them up because this is what he was originally looking at, and I couldn't read it. So this one, the single page, is about 15 of them that are true tax taking taking, that could probably go, yeah, say that 5 times fast, that could probably go to auction at some point. That, 5 of them on there are already taken care of based on the
Right.
auction that we just did.
Mhm.
And a couple of them are like Bradish Farm Road, like we're not gonna auction that off, needless to say.
They wouldn't like it.
We're gonna work on getting some deeds, so that's actually in the town of Upton's
Right.
land. So that was the smaller Excel file that was sent to you. And again, I just have to point out and interrupt my little comment here, because Bill is being very, what's the word I wanna say?
Modest.
Thank you, because if you're looking at 88 properties, he looked up the deeds for 88 properties and read them and determined where they should be classified. So again, thank you. Because we never had this type of database in the
No.
past, and now we have it. So the other document, which is a little bit larger, have all been deeded to the town of Upton through the Board of Selectmen or Conservation or some other way, if you look at the column that says granted shown on deed. And those we are thinking are conservation issues, well fields, cemeteries, Dairy Drive, all sorts of reasons of why the town of Upton, the deed is under the town of Upton's name.
Thus, that's where I was, read this, there's no conflict here.
You're
I was
right.
trying to, right, okay,
Right.
now I get it.
So,
So this is great, because now you've got a footprint, which we haven't had, so,
and just another, on the land use code, that is the first column, is the assessors are now putting these different codes, so if it's coded as 936, we know it's true tax taking. And so we'll be able to, as we move forward, we'll code them on the system the way they should be coded. And then we can just pull up a report and not have to spend 4 weeks, 3 weeks? I don't even know how many hours, 40-plus hours going through 88 deeds and determining which is what.
did you buy your coffee, Bill?
No, I didn't. I should have.
That's a shame. Well, the takeaway from this is, the good part is, the town now knows that there are not properties out there that we haven't either taken for taxation, we haven't applied to, or we haven't
Well,
addressed.
keep in mind, these are only the properties where the deeds have been transferred to the
Correct.
town of Upton. We're not, the treasure collector has placed liens on properties
Right.
for non-payment of taxes. We have no way of tracking those. That is something that hopefully the treasure collector has a listing of
Mhm.
on past dues and what
On the-
liens have been placed on there.
Under the authority of his office, he's the one that.
Because he's the
applies.
custodian of tax
Correct.
title
So,
properties.
Yeah, that's his call. But
Right.
be interesting to know if we have, how many out there.
Right.
Is anybody that got their tax bill reads what the penalty is for delinquent payment. It's
Right.
quite, a pretty high percentage. So, okay.
And I know he is placing liens on those properties because that needs to be notarized, so I do it
Okay,
on a fairly consistent basis. I will have to sign notarize a document for him. So the liens are being placed. I'm not sure where that listing is though.
okay. So the town of Upton owns considerable property.
And on top of that, we have state forest and land.
Which is a third of our town, geographic land space, so quite a bit. Do we have any comments, gentlemen? Gary?
I'd like to thank you for this work, and I guess we got some properties we could put up for auction. Future.
I will say that the largest concentration is around Taft Pond. I think there's 5 or 6 fairly small parcels around Taft Pond. None of those lots are very big. And there's a couple of others which are tiny as well.
Yes.
Just because I did all the work. There is a 4,000 square foot parcel off of Crockett Road, which I believe was a gift to the gentleman who later became the leader of the Los Angeles Zoo, which I thought was
Really?
fascinating.
Wow.
And they're from Boston, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, the owner was from Boston. The gentleman at the time was a vet in Boston. He was the chief veterinarian for the Animal Rescue League in Boston. So I'm assuming that there might have been some animal rights going on there, because it's hard to understand why
4,000.
anybody would give somebody a 4,000 square foot parcel.
Because it's not very big.
Yeah.
And then taxes weren't paid, so now the town of Upton owns it.
But to the ones on the pond, if you're a resident on the pond and you have waterfront,
Yeah.
you have an opportunity to expand and protect your waterfront, that makes sense. No
Yeah.
matter how small it is, you're gonna wanna ensure that that waterfront's yours. We did have one, I believe it's about 3 years ago, where a gentleman actually put a sprinkler system on town property and did not know it was the town, so.
And if you look at 0 East Street, it's at 215, a lot of that is Fisk Mill Pond. It's like Nipmunk Rod and Gun Club, I can't
Easy
talk,
for you to say.
Club owns half the pond, and the rest of the pond is now owned by the town of Upton through tax title.
So would our border be on the, let's just say, the Milford side of the pond? Assuming that I believe that's Pond Street right there, right?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of waterfront just basically at the intersection of Pond and East Street. The Rod and Gun Club owns the other side of the pond.
So based on what we understand, that land, when they developed or they started pulling out parcels, buildable parcels to be separated, they left little pieces along the shore and the pond itself. that the developer, like, it was never transferred from the developer to the new property owner, like they cut it out for some reason. So the developer just stopped paying taxes on it, so now it's, belongs to the town of Upton. So it's really, literally, we own half of the pond because of, well, it's in tax title, let's put it that way.
Right. Hmm. It's interesting.
But all of it would be on this side of the bridge, as far as you can tell by the map?
This side of the East Street Bridge,
Yeah, you know where the bridge that was
one that was
rebuilt?
recently redone?
Yes,
It's on the Upton side, yeah.
it's on the Upton side, okay. I know that's a division of the town, I just didn't know if the pond, how much of the pond is all of the pond in Upton?
If not all of it, most of it.
Yeah, it's the other side,
Maybe some, in-
is where the bridge is, and Milford had to, so, yeah. But, good to know.
Yeah, great job. That code, I think that code is really, that's pretty trick where you can easily now pull up that information. Well done.
And moving forward, Tracy, you know, the department coordinator will be looking when the deeds come through, because she'll process anywhere, I don't even know how many, on average, she processes deeds that get transferred on a monthly basis. So she'll be looking at them and coding them correctly. And at some point, we were even talking, we think some of them are coded where we're thinking, I think it's like the vacant district, and you could correct me if I'm wrong on that, that we would almost want DPW to take a look at and see if we own it because it's a culvert or a water easement or something, drainage easement is the term I'm looking for, to review all those to even get it further descriptive on exactly why it belongs to the town of Upton.
Yeah, I would say some land like the conservation might like to pick up, there's a couple small little sections.
I won't speak for Bill, but that's a big interest of his, and I think that was part of the reason why he started this project.
Well, yeah, so there are three, like I mentioned before, there are three tax takings, which Concom is included in their management plan for Warren Brook Watershed Conservation Area because they abut. They're otherwise landlocked. There's a small parcel that was taken in 1945, about 7 acres, which is just off of North Street, next to the pasture for Sweet William Farm. And then there's another 22-acre parcel, which is at the north end of the Warren Brook Watershed Conservation Area. And it's very interesting to me. It's an old silver maple property, which is the rest of Warren Brook was it was also old silver maple property that had been taken by one of the federal banks and then sold to the town.
Old Silver Maple was adjacent to a golf course. It was going to be a golf course in Upton, but that never materialized.
That's off of
correct.
Grafton Road, right?
Well,
Yeah.
it's, let's call it
Yeah.
Up there.
that end of Upton. It was large parcel, but that never materialized. But, yep, you're exactly on.
And then there's
So-
I'm sorry, there's one more, there's a small, 1/10 of an acre, 11/10 of an acre parcel, which provides access to Warren Brook off of Oak Knoll, which is, I mean, it's great for the neighborhood.
And at the last special town meeting, the voters approved transferring the responsibility for acceptance of land to the Board of Selectmen, which expedites the process versus having to hold up things to go to town meeting. And, you know, candidly, I've always been one that I'm not willing to accept land just because somebody wants to take it off the tax rolls. It needs to have value to the town of Upton, and that's a consideration that future boards of selectmen will look at, but it made sense to do it that way.
And finally, in some instances, it probably would make sense to, as we go through this process of truly understanding what we have and why we have it, you know, if we don't want anything to happen to it, then we probably want to make a filing at the Registry of Deeds so that if somebody goes to look at it, they know why we have it, and they won't mistakenly think that it may be available for sale. Because there's been actions taken at town meetings, which may or may not be reflected at the Registry of Deeds.
Got it. Okay. But certainly, thank you very much for all the work. I wish we could say you had more staff to get it done, but that's what you call volunteering. So thank you very much.
Derek, did you have a question?
My only thought was the disposition of this property, of all these properties at some point. I think I had shared in the past that in Plymouth, when vacant properties were taken through the treasure collector, there was a process where we would send those properties out with the maps, the lots, the blocks, and we send that to the departments and to the boards and committees. And I think to Bill's point, you know, maybe conservation, for certain reasons, think that we should put a CR on these. And so we would then go to town meeting, conservation would support an article, go to town meeting to have a conservation restriction put on. Or maybe the DPW, director, to Kelly's point, would say, we really need this land for drainage purposes. And so I guess my question really is, this is great work, and how do we take it to the next level so we can actually dispose of this somehow, or secure it somehow, so that in 20 years from now, when we're all gone, folks aren't trying to sell out this land, although it's supposed to have a conservation restriction. Thank you.
Well, I think that the very next step, and maybe even in time for annual town meeting, and I haven't even talked to Bill, but the three that he's recognized right up front, Bradish Farm Road, you know, one that's going to the different conservation areas, we should make sure that we take care of any votes or have the custodian of tax title transfer it and correct the deed so something is on file at the registry of deeds. So, you know, he's very plainly has identified at least three up front that we can at least start with, and then slowly go through the list as we move on and disperse it out and make sure that everything is recorded accordingly at the registry of deeds, so future generations knows that it's there.
I think to Eric's point, which would make sense, and I'd propose this, maybe a member of the Board of Selectmen and a member of the Board of Assessors sit down to develop a policy, and we enact a policy going forward so everyone understands, and it's both the Board of Assessors and Board of Selectmen. And I'm thinking, do we need to bring anybody else in? I don't know.
Well, you might want to be bringing in the custodian of tax title.
Okay, and then develop a policy that going forward, this is how this is managed. And when this occurs, the following steps take place. And everyone understands it, so get rid of all the confusion that may take place. And that's something to think about going forward.
Yep.
And then,
I
once the
agree.
policy's in, put it in writing, it's there, everyone knows what to do.
Yep.
Because, as we all know, boards and commissions change.
Mm-hmm.
So, once the policy's there, it's there for others to share.
Mhm.
Okay, unless there's anything else, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bill, we owe you a copy, but
At the very least.
don't hold your breath. Thank you very much.
Good work.
Next on our agenda, we used to, in this town, have an industrial development committee, and our dear friend Harvey Trask was the one that supported it. We never really had a lot of membership come forward, and at this time, there's been a lot of questions. Basically, a lot of it has been brought about by the recent activity that's going to take place, will be taking place, and I don't want to steal Derek's thunder, so I'll let him address it, relative to the center of Upton, and we're looking at transitioning plans through community partnership. And it would be very helpful if we had a committee in place, a Development and Industrial Commission. So I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Great, so there have been a number of residents who have stepped forward and approached myself, have approached the town clerk and asked if, given the conversations that had taken place at town meeting, and the economic development opportunities that are in front of us, if the board would be willing to consider appointing the old Industrial Development Committee. Quite frankly, it sounds to me, when I hear that term, I think of something of the industrial age, in thinking about mill towns. So maybe more fitting that the board consider appointing a membership group titled the Economic Development Committee that I can work with and others can work with here in town to really envision what we want the downtown revitalization project to look like, help the town develop an economic development plan moving forward, so we always have a plan where we expect to be in 5 years and 10 years out. So I think those would be two quick tasks that, not quick, but they would take some time, but two tasks that the committee could work on right away. And then additionally, I can guarantee you there's going to be other opportunities that are going to rise over the next 12 to 24 months. That'd be great to have some civic input.
Okay, gentlemen?
I guess a quick question. Earlier you had mentioned that we received a grant for an economic development plan.
That's right.
How do you see that interacting with this committee?
I believe strongly in committees, and I would ask the committee if they'd be willing to work with me and take the lead on helping the town work through all those different items. So what do we want our priority development areas to be? What should our village district bylaw look like? How big should our village districts be? And maybe we should keep them small. Those types of things, all the different deliverables that are coming out of that grant, I would ask the committee to assist me in thinking those things through. And we're gonna have staff support as part of that grant as well through CMRPC.
Okay.
Gary? I think this is the perfect opportunity with, you guys said everything we bought, the Milford Street and all your visions and plans to really get this Economic Development Committee up and running again.
Not to put you on the spot, do you want to address any of your future goals and objectives? Or would you rather defer that to another time?
I think I'll have to defer that.
Okay. All right, just an opportunity, that was all. Okay, so going forward, I think we're in agreement. We would entertain applications to be brought forward for a Economic Development Committee to work with the town manager through the Board of Selectmen, and the roles will be more clearly defined once it's established. But obviously, the objective is to work with town manager and to, through the utilization of grant money and Central Mass Regional Planning, and the Planning Board and others work to develop a plan so we have a future objectives and it's clearly defined. So we would most graciously accept any applications. I guess there are some, but please forward them to the Board of Selectmen's office to attention town manager, and we'll take it from there. Anything else? We're there?
Did they make a motion or anything? Or did dissolve the other committee or anything?
No. No, it's still there. We're just gonna rename it, so. Next one, Mr. Metellian, I turn this over to you. You had asked this be put on the agenda?
This is in regard to the Capital Budget Committee. We had made the adjustment at the annual town meeting back in May, where the Capital Budget Committee will be now weighing in on all items valued over $25,000, warrant articles, I should say, over $25,000. It came to my attention recently that the Board of Selectmen do not have any appointments to that board. So when it was originally set up, it made sense, it was an extension of the Finance Committee. But now, under its current guise, there will be a lot more work and a lot more, there will be a lot more articles that they'll be weighing in on. So I thought that it would be helpful and really necessary that the Board of Selectmen have some appointments to that committee. We also had conversation, it's currently an even-numbered committee of 6 on the committee. So I guess we could leave that up to discussion if we want to keep it at 6. But my thinking is that it's currently set up with a member of the planning board appointed by the planning board, a member of the FinCom appointed by the FinCom, and 4 additional members appointed by FinCom. So I guess we'd open the discussion, see what you gentlemen think, and do we think that those other 4 appointments should be under the Board of Selectmen?
I would change it to 3, to the Board of Selectmen.
So you're in favor of changing the structure?
So it's kind of weird the way it's written, because it says, you know, it looks like the Finance Committee actually appoints 5, the way I read it.
That's correct.
I don't know why it doesn't say it in the
Their
beginning.
own and then 4.
Yeah.
Well, it's clear because one has to be from within their membership.
Right.
And then there's 4 additional.
Okay.
That's why it's, yeah. So, but you're in favor of making changes to this? Gentlemen, I'd ask for
Should we reach out to FinCom?
some, that was gonna be my request, to reach out to the Finance Committee and the Planning Board to just ask them for their inputs before. Obviously, we don't wanna step on their toes. They presently have that authority, and ask them for their inputs to it, and we can address it at our next meeting. So if, Derek, if we could have a reach out to them for their input,
Sure.
that'd be great. Thank you. Anything else?
That would be it for now.
Okay, great. Next, Derek, I'm going to turn this one over to you as well. It's the Narragansett Indian Tribal Historic Preservation Trust, and they have some concerns, and I know you're working on it at this point, so to you, please.
So, recently, there's been a lot of community conversation relative to the rock formations up on Pratt Hill. Right now, it's challenging for those individuals who want to visit the rock formations to climb the hill for various reasons, because it's gated. So as you know, there's a water tower and a cell tower both on top of the hill, so it's gated for safety concerns and security. So Kathy Taylor reached out to me and she asked if the town would be willing to work with her on a policy so that herself and others from the tribal historic preservation offices can open the gate on their own and not have to burden the town with opening the gate for them. So I brought this to the attention of our public safety officials this morning, emergency management, fire and police, and they, to their credit, raised a number of concerns. As you can imagine, public safety concerns, security concerns, so on and so forth. So I think at this time, it seems like given all of the questions that need to be answered, it would make sense for me to circle back with Kathy Taylor and her team and try to draft a policy that we can bring before the Board of Selectmen. Issues of liability and indemnification certainly will come up as well. So for those reasons, I'm asking to table this. Give me some more time to work with Kathy, work with our public safety officials, and then draft a more solid policy. If you're willing to even entertain that discussion, I guess that's my first question.
Gary, you have any comment to this?
Actually, I gotta drive up there and find out where this is at. I was just gonna ask you, is there a way just to secure our property? And
It
have
is
a
secure.
road? But I mean, would make access for the community. I'm not familiar with the area, so I'd have to go take a look.
You probably do. It's unique. I'll let it go with that, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's the question, is there right now currently parking and you need to walk like several hundred yards to get to the property? How is it currently set up?
I can speak to that.
There's a number of problems. First of all, there's a controlled area that DPW maintains, which affects that site. There's a road, call it a road, that's kind of like this. And should anybody's car go out of gear, it will make the papers. So there are multiple factors. Anything else you want to add to it?
It's a very steep.
Very steep.
Very
It's
steep.
a very steep incline.
The gate is at the bottom of the hill. It's actually, I think, on state forest land.
Is it? Yeah.
So you could conceivably move it to a point at the top of the hill to gate the water tower and the cell tower. But there'd be an expense involved with that. And you also have people who could drive up the hill and come off the hill in a very uncontrolled fashion, as Mr. Fleming just pointed out.
Yeah.
But it would be, for people who are trying to maintain and bring visitors to the stone features up at the top of the hill, it would be really nice if they didn't have, if they didn't have to climb the hill. So there's a bit of a balance there.
I think from discussion with the EMS, emergency staff, public safety, their intention is not to obstruct this. It's to protect, candidly, the town's liability. Because someone goes up there and they get hurt, the town's liable for it. We want to make sure everybody has access, but the proper way. And I would just prefer to revisit this after you've had discussion with police, fire, EMS, and DPW for that matter, whomever else, and we revisit it. And if you haven't been up there, it's quite a trip.
Is it a long walk?
Well, it's steep, is really,
Yeah.
it's probably about a quarter of a mile.
Yeah. So
Feels like straight up.
So I'm assuming it's a dirt road or?
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
gravel road, and it gets washed out occasionally, so it's a bit of a
It's-
struggle.
the whole thing came about, there was a proposal to put a cell tower up there, if I remember right. And that's what brought all this fruition. And then the Indian artifacts were discovered, and they were probably discovered before that, but that brought it to sight. So I think at this time, we'll defer this and let town manager do some more research and reschedule for our next meeting or when's convenient.
And as a side note, Chronicle was at the site back in early December, and they intend to have one of their episodes regarding these rock formations here in Upton sometime in January, so.
Oh.
Good.
It's believed that the stone features at the top of Pratt Hill are connected with the chamber. The stone
Around Elm
chamber,
Street?
and that if you look at from the chamber, there's alignments that would alert you to the fact that it's time to plant or whatever. that sort of thing, and then also the seasonal, or the solstices and so on and so forth. It's fascinating.
Okay, so deferred till future. Next on our agenda, and last on our agenda, is a request for a road race. This seems extremely familiar to me, I don't know why. A 5K spooky run race, I think I'm confusing it with the Halloween one that was just handled, and seems like yesterday. And this is by the Mendon Upton Educational Foundation, a MERSed organization. And we have the application here. It's completed with signature, and it's been approved by police and by fire EMS. So, any questions, gentlemen?
No, sir.
Gary?
No, sir.
Steve? Gary, if you'd make a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to grant the Mendon Upton Educational Foundation permission for the road race on, when is that, October 28th, 2018, at 10 a.m.
Second the motion?
That's unanimous action of the board. Are there any questions from the general public? There being none, the board will enter an executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Exception 2, to conduct contact negotiations with non-union personnel. We will adjourn at the conclusion of the executive session. Robert Fleming, aye.
Gary Darty, aye.
Stephen Mattelli and I.
We are in executive session.